The effects of social media on modern relationships. I know most people have an opinion about this, and the general rule of thinking is that social media is detrimental to relationships. And I mean, I'm not going to totally disagree with that, but I just can't quite get on board with that. And I'll tell you why. We as humans tend to need something to blame. When things go wrong, we need to blame something. So we want to blame social media for a relationship failure. If you have a strong foundation, social media is not going to break that foundation. It's not. What happens, I believe, is that there's cracks in the foundation, and social media brings those out, brings those to light more so than just everyday life. But I just can't blame social media, and I am not a fan of social media. Never have been. I know it's kind of weird, but that's just me. I could totally go without it and be fine. But and I'm not saying anything negative about those who are on social media a lot, because live and let live. We're all different. We all have different needs. We all have different interests. Blah blah blah, and that's cool. But here's the thing. As much as I don't believe that social media harms relationships, people harm relationships. That's what happens. But if you're on social media and you spend a lot of time on social media, but you're still getting all your, obligations met, and you're still, spending time with your significant other, I don't see that that is a problem. It shouldn't be. But if you are doing things that you can't tell your significant other about, that's not to say that you should be telling them or you have to tell them. But if push came to shove, could you tell your significant other what you're up to on social media? Could you be totally honest about it? If you can, good for you. That's a win. That means you're not doing anything wrong. So don't get this in your head that social media harms relationships. I don't believe it does. People harm relationships. People, we're people and we're human, and we are not faultless. And we have to stand up and say, okay, social media maybe didn't help the relationship, but it didn't break it. It didn't ruin it. And that's just me. I just can't, logic just won't allow me to get there. Now, having said that, like I said, I believe that if you're in a committed relationship, you better not be doing anything that you can't speak about to your significant other. Doesn't mean you have to, doesn't mean you will. I get that, but if you can't, if you're doing things secretly, that's a problem. And stop and think about this. If this is you, stop and think about this. How would you feel? Put yourself on the other side of the fence. How would you feel? Would you feel good about that? If you wouldn't feel good about it, don't do it. Don't do something to somebody else that you would not feel good about if somebody did to you. Very simple thought. Very simple way to live. That's the way people should live their life, I believe. How would I feel if this were done to me? Would I be happy? Would I feel good? I better not do it to somebody else then. And, I think that we should all kind of take that, pay attention to that, because that's old school thinking. I get that, but it's solid thinking, and it's good thinking, and it's a good way to, keep yourself in check. Ask yourself sometimes, how would I feel if this were done to me? How would I feel if somebody did this to me? How would I feel? And that's a good way to check yourself. But social media, I think, is harmless for the most part, unless you have like some sort of addiction to it, or you're doing things that, are detrimental to others. That's not good, and that's not okay. But if you are just spending your time, scrolling and, whatever, it's your time. You're free to do with it what you want. So anyway, that's my thinking on the effects on relationships. I think social media is good for some things and not good for others. I do think that it does harm self-esteem for certain people who, compare themselves to others, or compare their lives to others, because social media is kind of like watching TV. It's not all real. And if you start internalizing that and comparing yourself to that, you're not going to feel very good. So don't do that. And don't compare your significant other to somebody else, ever. Anyway, that's my take. Good luck.